Hello and welcome. Tonight, Federal High Court in Kano gives controversial judgment on the candidacy of some Labour Party candidates, including Governor-elect of Abia State, Alex Oti. The party and its lawyers say the judgment is statute barred. Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo says posterity will be kind to President Muhammadu Buhari as he launches 2 books written in honor of President Buhari. Founder of New Generation Bank, First City Monument Bank, Olashibomi Balogun, who's believed to have pioneered investment banking, dies at the age of 89.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's foreign reserves record slight positive movement of $8.22 million to close at $35.2 billion week on week.
On sports news tonight, treble-chasing Manchester City can tick the first box by capturing their 3rd consecutive Premier League title this weekend in what manager Pep Guardiola said is the most important.
From Abuja, the Bill and Melinda Foundation pledges to continue its intervention programs in health, agriculture and other areas in the economy as it opens its new office complex in the Federal Capital Territory.
And in international news from London, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has made a speech at the Arab League summit asking for help to secure peace in his country.
The presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, is accusing the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, of being a proxy in its petition against Bola Tinubu's qualifications for the election. INEC, through its counsel, had moved a motion on notice praying the court to strike out 32 allegations made against Mr. Tinubu by Mr. Atiku, who is alleging the declaration of Tinubu as winner of February the 25th's presidential election. Our correspondent Emmanuela Ekele has more.
The acting national chairman of Labour Party, Lamidi Apapa, is back at the Court of Appeal, venue of the Presidential Election Petition Court, apparently to assert his authority as the chairman of the party. He, however, took a seat at the back of the courtroom and not in the area reserved for Labour Party officials. The presidential candidate of the party, Mr. Peter Obi, arrives at the field courtroom and goes around exchanging pleasantries with lawyers present.
Good morning, sir. Sister, how are you? I'm very well, thank you. Thank you.
Shortly after, the justices arrived for the day's proceedings, beginning with the petition of the People's Democratic Party. All the 7 motions filed by the respondents seeking the court to strike out the petition of Atiku were heard and reserved for ruling. The lead counsel for the PDP, Chris Uche, accuses INEC of being partial by taking up the defense of Tinubu, contrary to the provisions of the law. He insists INEC ought to be neutral. INEC has said the allegations, which form 32 paragraphs in Atiku's petition, should be removed by the court for various reasons, including lack of jurisdiction.
We were surprised that INEC left issues relating to the conduct of the election to begin to fight a proxy war for the second respondent, that's Tinubu, because if you look at the processes filed, all they were saying was to strike out the paragraphs where we pleaded issues relating to Tinubu's qualifications. So we said, no, that is not for INEC to do. Tinubu has his own counsel. APC also has their own counsel.
Meanwhile, back in the courtroom, the panel refused to acknowledge a counsel supposedly for Lamidi Apapa or Bamadu Abuchi, who claimed he was representing the Labour Party. This was after another senior advocate, Awakalu, had made an appearance for the party. He was stopped by the panel, who insisted that the legal representation for the petitioners is just one. The justices told him that he should have advised his client properly, being a senior advocate of Nigeria. The court adjourned to May 22 for ruling on the application by the Labour Party for live coverage of proceedings.
We don't want opaqueness. We want transparency. That's why that application was filed. It's been argued, and I don't want to say that whoever is opposing it does not want transparency.
The court also adjourned to May 20 for parties to agree on the schedule of hearing in the main petition. They will agree on the number of witnesses to be called and the time allocated for them to testify and be cross-examined. Emanuela Ekele, Channels Television News.
In the meantime, Justice Mohammed Yunusa of the Federal High Court Kano has declared the votes polled by the Abia State Governor-elect, Dr. Alex Otti, in the last general election as wasted, but stopped short of making an order withdrawing Mr. Otti and other affected candidates' certificates of return. Justice Yunusa cited the failure of the Labour Party to submit its membership registers of Kano and Abia to the Independent National Electoral Commission preparatory to the party's primary election as a basis for his verdict. He says it is in breach of the provisions of Section 77, subsection 3 of the Electoral Act 2022. The judge ruling on a suit by Mr. Ibrahim Haruna Ibrahim said under Section 77, subsection 3 of the Electoral Act, the Labour Party ought to submit its membership registers to INEC 30 days before its primary elections in Kano and Abia states. The judge held that the void primary elections of Labour Party cannot produce eligible candidates to be sponsored by the party in the general election, and the participation of the candidates of the party in the election in Kano and Abia State are wasted. The judge also turned down the request of the plaintiff, who asked the court to order INEC to declare the first runners-up in all the elections in Abia and Kano states as winners. Justice Yunusa said since the candidates that came second in the election were not parties in the suits before him, the court lacks the jurisdiction to make an order for the issuance of certificate of return to them, but were at liberty to seek redress in the appropriate division of the court. Also staying with legal matters, Justice Hamza Muazu of the Federal Capital Territory High Court has granted a stay of execution order on the suspension of Julius Abure, chairman of the Labour Party, and others. Now, others are the National Organising Secretary, Mr. Clement Ojukwu, and the National Treasurer, Oluchi Opara. The plaintiffs in the case sought the removal of Mr. Abure and 3 other national officers of the party, which the judge granted the order of suspension. The judge, after listening to arguments from parties, granted the order for stay of execution pending the determination of the appeal filed by the defendants. Justice Muazu had on April 5th issued an interim injunction stopping Mr. Abure Ibrahim and the party's National Organising Secretary, Mr. Clement Ojukwu, and National Treasurer Oluchi Opara from parading themselves as national officers of the Labour Party. At the day's proceedings, the defendants told the court that they have a notice of appeal pending at the Court of Appeal. After taking arguments from the parties, the judge granted the order for stay on the suspension. Following the April 5th ex parte injunction made by Justice Muazu stopping Mr. Abure Ibrahim and 2 others of the party, on April the 20th, they argued that the court lacked jurisdiction to entertain the matter. The senior advocate had submitted that the matter before the court bordered on the internal affairs of the Labour Party, adding that criminal allegations made by the plaintiffs in the case could not be ventilated in an originating summons. He added that the 8 plaintiffs that brought the case before the court were not members of the National Executive Council of the party and as such lacked the locus standi to institute the case. While objecting to the preliminary objection raised by the counsel for Abure, counsel for the plaintiffs, Mr. George Ibrahim, urged the court to dismiss same. According to him, the 1st to 4th defendants had yet to obey the April 5th order. With the ruling of the court on having jurisdiction to hear the case, its order of April 5th subsists. The judge then adjourned until Friday to hear the substantive case. Earlier, the plaintiffs had informed the court through their counsel that Mr. Abure and 3 other national officials allegedly forged several documents of the FCT High Court, including receipts, seal, and affidavits to carry out unlawful substitutions in the last general election. Meantime, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, appears not happy about the phone call between Nigeria's President-elect Bola Tinubu and the U.S. Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken. Mr. Obi, in a series of tweets, says Nigerians expect that the United States' response to Nigeria's affairs should be based on mutual respect, which ought to transcend the considerations of any individual. Some of the tweets by the Labour Party presidential candidate reads, "There is still a lack of clarity on the basis of the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony J. Blinken's call to APC's presidential candidate Bola Ahmed Tinubu on the 16th of May 2023. The most fundamental tenet and core value of democracy is the rule of law. Nigeria's democracy is founded on these principles, which the American people hold dear. Without the risk of interfering in Nigeria's domestic affairs, the U.S.-Nigeria relationship should be guided by the core values of democracy." The former governor of Anambra State said the final determination of the true winner of the election can only be made by the relevant courts of law. Well, Mr. Festus Kiamo, spokesman for the APC's 2023 presidential election campaign, says that the U.S. is aware that Peter Obi, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, lost the presidential election. He was reacting to the comments of Peter Obi on that telephone call. Mr. Kiamo stated that there is clarity to the basis of the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken's call to the president-elect and their pledge for support and cooperation. In his statement, Mr. Kiamo said the U.S. have dealt with so many opposition figures around the world and they know exactly how to separate facts from fiction. He said the Labour Party should know they lost fair and square. He also explained that the U.S. knows the declaration of a winner already announced by INEC as having the force of law and is the only acceptable legal framework upon which to proceed than Mr. Obi's petition in court that is yet to be decided upon. He called on the Labour Party presidential candidate not to force the hand of the law. We're going back to the story on politics, and this is the Labour Party legal advisor, Kehinde Edun, and former NBA second vice president, Mondu Bani, who have been speaking on the judgment by the state judge in Kano overturning the victory of Mr. Alex Otti as the governor-elect in Abia State. They say that the judgment is empty and should not be reckoned with. They were both speaking on our political program, Politics Today.
We have seen the judgment order that everybody has seen. We have looked at it. Look at the parties. That alone gives us confidence. None of our elected was a defendant in the matter. You can't get judgment against somebody who has won an election, has gotten a certificate of return, is due to be sworn in, and you are saying you are getting judgment against that person. But I also want to say that, you see, we have to look at the judgment order very well. The court actually said that it could not give order against Alex Otti. It is in that document that's flying around. The court said that it could not give order against Alex Otti because Alex Otti and the elected members in Abia are not before the court. And that if anybody wants any judgment against them, they should go to the appropriate division of the court. The court was talking about territorial jurisdiction in that matter. That court in Kano could not have done it. But I'm even saying, I'm curious that the court mentioned that Alex Otti and the members in Abia are not before the court, so the court couldn't give judgment against them. But even the members in Kano were not before the court. Just looking at that process, that judgment order, you see that they were not before the court. So there's no way we could suffer any injury. We are happy because this is a vindication of our position about what Apapa and his motley group are doing.
There are so many issues that cropped up in my mind. One, I was asking myself, is this a pre-election matter? Or is it a post-election matter? If it is a pre-election matter, who is the party? Who is this man? Does he have any locus? Why Federal High Court in Kano? And if it is a pre-election matter, has he actually complied with the timeline as provided for in Section 285, subsection 9 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, that says only 14 days you have in a pre-election matter? And this particular candidate, they mentioned, that is Dr. Alex Otti, his primaries was concluded in, I think, sometime in last year, 2022, not even in 2023. And we are now in May. And you are bringing a pre-election matter in May of 2023, after election has been conducted in March. Now, if it is a post-election issue that this man is taking to Federal High Court, for God's sake, the Federal High Court is not a proper court. It doesn't have jurisdiction. When election has been concluded, result announced, and a party has been given what we call certificate of return. The proper place for you to now go is an election tribunal. Now, if you are raising the issue of qualification, you go there and as a candidate and challenge the man who has emerged as a winner.
In part two, after the break, founder of New Generation Bank, First City Monument Bank, Olashibomi Balogun, a man who's believed to have pioneered investment banking, dies at the age of 89. We'll have that story in a moment. To join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live from Channels Television. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Federal High Court in Kano gives controversial judgment on the candidacy of some Labour Party candidates, including Governor-elect of Abia State, Dr. Alex Otti. The party and its lawyers say the judgment is statute barred. Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo says posterity will be kind to President Muhammadu Buhari as he launches 2 books written in honor of President Buhari. Founder of New Generation Bank, First City Monument Bank, Olashibomi Balogun, was believed to have pioneered investment banking, dies at the age of 89. And the United States says it will support providing advanced fighter jets, including US-made F-16s to Ukraine, and also back training Ukrainian pilots to fly them. Nigeria's financial market has lost one of its pillars of the New Generation Bank, FCMB, Otumba Michael Olashibomi Balogun. He died at the age of 89. Otumba Balogun reportedly died in London in the early hours of today. During his lifetime, he is believed to have pioneered investment banking and other financial instruments. Our next report takes a look at his journey in Nigeria's financial market.
This is how many will love to remember respected elder statesman, renowned banker, and founder of New Generation Bank, First City Monument Bank, Otumba Michael Olashibomi Balogun, as he dances to his favorite Christian song. Born on March 9, 1934 in Ijebu-Ode, Ogun State, southwest Nigeria, Otumba Balogun graduated from Igbobi College, Lagos, and then proceeded to the London School of Economics, where he studied law. After earning his law degree, he returned to Nigeria to join the Ministry of Justice, Western Region. He later went on to start City Securities, a stockbroking and issuing house. Otumba Balogun then founded First City Monument Bank, a company that later became the FCMB Group. Otumba Balogun was a recipient of several awards, including the American Biographical Institute Incorporated's Distinguished Leadership Award for outstanding contributions to the development of investment banking.
3, 2, 1, 0.
His life was not all about the boardroom, as he always found time to celebrate with his family and friends. And his birthday, which falls on March 9th every year, is always a rallying point for such celebrations. For Otumba Olashibomi Balogun, the music may have stopped as he passes on at the age of 89. But his legacies in business and entrepreneurship are bound to outlive him. already, condolences are pouring in for the family. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari celebrates his legacy of kindness and charity, while the governor of his home state, Dapo Abiodun, described the death of Otumba Balogun as a colossal loss not only to Ogun State, but Nigeria and the business world. He is survived by his wife, Abimbola, children, grandchildren, and other family members.
Our thoughts and prayers are with his family at this time. Well, let's head to the southeast, where the Joint Security Forces have rescued the remaining victims abducted during the attack on U.S. convoy along Atani-Osamila Road in Ogbaru local government area of Anambra State. According to the State Commissioner of Police, the rescue took place in the early hours of today. The governor of Anambra State, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, had condoled with bereaved families and organizations, particularly the U.S. Embassy, over the death of their staff and policemen who were attacked by gunmen along that road.
You will recall that on the 17th of this month, May 2023, we had a press briefing here at the police command headquarters on the ambush that happened with some people from the United States Consulate, Lagos, and the action that the security forces in the states, the Army, the Navy, the police, and the DSS have taken. In that briefing, we told you that as at that day, we had lost 7 out of the 9 men who were in 2 vehicles and who were on a convoy to Osamala to assess the environmental impact erosion in that particular place. And we made a promise that the security agencies, the Army, the Navy, the police, the DSS was working around the clock to make sure that the 2 missing people were rescued alive. I am happy to announce to you this morning that at the wee hours of today, the joint security forces comprising of the Army, the Navy, the police, and the DSS rescued the 2 missing people. They are hale and healthy.
We head now for more stories to our Abuja studios. Linda, it's good to see you.
Hello, Millicent. Good to see you too. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has officially opened a branch office in the nation's capital, Abuja. Speaking at the ceremony, the president of Global Development at the foundation, Mr. Christopher Elias, says the launch provides a comfortable environment for the staff to help advance the work of the foundation in Nigeria. Mr. Elias lists agricultural development, gender equality, immunization, and financial services to the poor as some of the key services that will be rendered by the foundation in the country.
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is making its presence count in Nigeria with the opening of its Nigerian office, the 6th global office.
Saw you out there and wanted to build.
Driven by the watchword, all lives have equal value, the non-profit organization is determined to fight the greatest inequality in the world by using its resources to create a world of equal opportunity. Agricultural development, financial services to the poor, routine immunization, and strategic primary health care partnerships are some of the core services the foundation hopes to render.
This launch is very important. You know, we've been working in Nigeria for almost 10 years, and having this new office is really an opportunity to bring all of our staff, our growing staff, as well as our partners, into a beautiful space where we can continue our work to improve the lives of all Nigerians. Agricultural development, financial services for the poor, are very important work on improving immunization, which helped to achieve the remarkable goal of eradicating polio from Nigeria 6 years ago, as well as our work in nutrition and a broad range of other health issues.
Laid on the basis of equity, the organizers are committed to delivering all services of BMGF in Nigeria.
We don't have any end date for our plans to be in Nigeria. We've been in Nigeria really since the beginning of our work in health and agriculture, because Nigeria is such an important part of the African continent's future. And so we will continue to work here in Nigeria with our broad range of partners for the indefinite future.
All lives have equal value. Every time you look at the place where there should be an arbitrage to enable us to focus our activities in a way we can make a difference to equity, that's how we bring our job programs.
We all work on spreadsheets and on design and on difficult decisions. And when you see it come to life with people and people that care deeply and that people that work together to ensure that all lives have equal value, it's a really fabulous day.
The management is optimistic that the country will play a pivotal role in charting Africa's future in ensuring equal opportunity to lead healthy and productive lives.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Nigeria's foreign reserves record slight positive movement of $8.22 million to close at $35.2 billion week on week. That's on Business News. Do join us again. You're welcome back to the news at 10, coming to you live from Abuja. The Bank of Industry has maintained an appreciable growth in its financial performance in 2022, despite the unstable global business environment. The chairman of the bank, Mr. Liu Diko, made this disclosure during the bank's 63rd annual general meeting in Abuja. He adds that the bank's total assets grew by 39.2% between 2021 and 2022.
Nigeria's oldest and largest development finance institution, the Bank of Industry, is holding this 63rd annual general meeting amidst the impact of the global economic challenges from the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian-Ukraine war. Shareholders and the management team of the bank are looking at the books to assess the performance of the bank in 2022.
Total assets of the group grew by 39.2% between 2021 and 2022, from 1.71 trillion to 2.38 trillion, respectively. This growth was largely due to the 3 successful capital raising transactions worth €1.8 billion in the year. The group also reported a growth of 11.7% in its total equity between 2021 and 2022.
Despite all of these economic challenges, the bank increases credit to the Nigerian private sector.
Credit to Nigeria's private sector increased by 19.7%, or 6.88 trillion, to 41.8 trillion from 34.92 trillion in 2020 and 2021, respectively.
As Nigeria joins the rest of the world on the road to full economic recovery, the managing director of the Bank of Industry, Mr. Olukayode Piton, speaks on how the bank's operations will still favor the Nigerian micro, small and medium enterprises, despite the country's accelerated annual inflation rate of almost 22%.
Most of the loans that we give out, the rates are anywhere between 9 and 10%. So actually, this is a time for, the small and medium-sized companies to actually, come and take more loans from BOI. Because when you have the monetary policy rates at over 18% and you are getting funds from us at about 10%, it means the funds from BOI are subsidized.
The management of the bank remains confident of an improved outlook in 2023, while promising to deliver on its mandate to strengthen the micro, small and medium enterprises.
River State Governor Nyesom Wike has hailed his administration for being faithful in fulfilling promises. He says he will leave office on May 29th with his shoulders high following his achievements in the state. Governor Wike was speaking while commissioning the internal road projects in 2 communities in Port Harcourt and Okrika local government areas. The events are part of activities to mark the inauguration of a new governor.
In continuation of the activities marking the inauguration of a new governor, Governor Nyesom Wike of River State is leading government officials and others to Elekahia in Port Harcourt area for the inauguration of the community's internal roads. 28 roads with a combined length of 5.45 kilometers are to be inaugurated by the governor 5 months after it was flagged off for reconstruction.
The project comprises of 28 separate roads of varying lengths and varying widths. The longest of them all is about 900, and the total length of the 28 roads is 5.45 kilometers. We also have drains. The widths vary. The widest of them all is about 8 meters, and we have a lot of them that are also narrow because a heavily built up area. Your Excellency, thank you for making this possible for the people of Elekahia. God bless you.
Governor Wike says his administration has redefined politics and governance in the country by making promises and fulfilling them even before the scheduled time. He is also appreciative to the people for supporting the PDP in the last governorship election.
You know, people who are not trustworthy think that others are not also trustworthy. I will make promise and I'll keep the promise. I thank God that today I've done that. Since you came out, your people gave us that kind of support. We will also not hide. We will also give you the necessary support. So I thank all of you and thank the entire ABC people for the support you gave to us in the last general election, particularly the governorship election. I thank you very much.
He then commissions the roads. From Port Harcourt, he moves to Okrika local government area, where he commissions 13 roads measuring 5.6 kilometers, which form the second phase of the community's internal road network executed by the River State government. More projects are expected to be commissioned and flagged off as Governor Nyesom Wike boasts of finishing well and laying a strong foundation for his successor.
That's all from Abuja. Now to Anne for business news.
Thank you, Linda. Hello and welcome to Business News. Nigeria's forex reserves recorded slight positive movement this week following last week's decline. Data coming from the Central Bank of Nigeria shows the country's forex reserves rose by a little above $8 million week on week to $35.2 billion as at May the 17th. Economic experts have attributed the latest figure to rising demand pressure on official forex reserve, as well as reduced foreign exchange inflow into the economy. One of Nigeria's leading insurance institutions, Nyesom Insurance PLC, has declared growth of gross premium of 20% from 27.8 billion naira in the year 2021 to 33.3 billion in the year 2022, and this exceeds the projection of the board. According to the group managing director and CEO of the company was able to exceed the expectations of the board and shareholders despite the constraints in economy in the year 2022.
Position together with the financial.
It's the 53rd annual general meeting of Nyesom Insurance PLC.
As I request that those moving motions and those seconded motions put to the meeting.
The company's leadership, led by the chairman, meets with the shareholders to present reports and financial statements for the year 2022. The performance indicator shows that the gross premium recorded for the year 2022 is 33.3 billion naira, which is an increase of 20% over the previous year.
I hereby move that the dividend of 30 kobo per ordinary share of one naira recommended by the directors, and it amounts to a total, that is the 30 kobo, amounts to a total of 1,504,943,330 naira and 10 kobo. Be and is hereby approved. Would someone please rise?
A dividend of 30 kobo per ordinary share is declared, which goes down well with the shareholders.
Prince Awosoya, I do second that motion.
The company has done well over the years. The trajectory of growth has been outstanding. We continue to take a greater market share in the Nigerian space and look to increasing that. We are now one of the leading companies in the oil sector and will continue to lead in that sector, while we also look for new areas to expand into.
NEM Insurance Group Managing Director says despite the economic challenges the company experienced in the year 2022, the expectation of the board and stakeholders were surpassed.
To grow our profit by over 21%, despite the difficult operating environment, I think is quite significant. And so I think in the light of given the environment within which we operated in 2022, I think we did quite well.
NEM Insurance PLC says its mission is to build a customer-satisfying insurance institution that is passionate about adding value to the interest of all stakeholders.
President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the appointment of Dr. Oluwatoyin Shakirat-Maidane as the Substantive Accountant General of the Federation, the AGF. This was contained in a statement from the Office of the Head of Civil Service of the Federation. She was appointed and she now takes effect from May 18th this year, becoming the first female to assume that position in the history of Nigeria. Before her appointment, she was the Director of Finance and Accounts in the Office of the Head of Civil Service of the Federation. Let's head to the stock market now, where it made a rebound at the close of trade today as the week now ended in green. Laddie Williams has the details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Reports, TGIF, and we have a bullish close for the last trading day of the week after that big drop yesterday. We see the bull taking the final trading day of the week, but let's take a look at the numbers now. 52,187 points as the all-share index. No breakout there from that descending channel. Talking about the all-share index, but we get that close, 0.15%. Market cap 28.416 trillion. Let's look at the activity chart now. We see it's higher activities from investors today. 810 million units of stocks valued at 8.19 billion naira. But we see deals losing that 6,000 level, 5,313 in the red for today. Let's look at the sectoral performance. Yeah, we see banking there up 1.26% after that big drop yesterday, thanks to about 4 of the 5 figures there adding to their share price. We look at the oil and gas counter, that's down 0.97%. Thanks to profit taking with Ardova and Ondo. That counted the gains from Seplat, taking the oil and gas counter down 0.97%. Market breadth is positive, 33 gainers against a dozen decliners. But with that lone Thursday loss of 0.9%, that has counted the gains made in other trading days of this week, making it a bearish week. Now that's the Stock Market Report. I'm Laddie Williams. It's back to you, Anne.
Business News Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. It's back to you, Millicent. Thanks, Anne, and I do plan to. But let's take you back to an earlier story which we brought you about the 2023 governorship election and the courts declaring all Labour Party candidates' votes in Abia and Kano as a waste. Well, there is an update to that story. The Federal High Court in Kano has denied and nullified the candidature of the Abia State Governor-elect, Dr. Alex Oti. Justice Mohammed Nasir Yunusa of the Kano Division of the Federal High Court says the candidates who participated in the 2023 general election in Abia were not parties before his court. The court, however, said it nullified the election of the candidates for Kano Labour Party that contested during the 2023 general election. And Mr. Ibrahim Harun Ibrahim had filed an application seeking the court to revoke and set aside the certificate of return issued to all LP, this Labour candidates declared winner in Kano and the 35 states of the Federation administration, including the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Now, Channels Television gathered that the respondents in the suit are the Labour Party and the Independent National Electoral Commission. Justice Mohammed Nasser Yunusa said the candidates who participated in the 2023 general election in Abia were not parties before his court, as it lacks jurisdiction to make an order for the issuance of certificate of return. And less than 10 days before President Muhammadu Buhari's exit from office, President Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana has launched 2 new books in his honor, stating that the world will miss his leadership qualities. The Ghanaian president was speaking during the launch of the 2 books, which are titled State of Repair: How Muhammadu Buhari Tried to Change Nigeria for Good, written by a journalist, Anthony Goldman, while The Legacy of Muhammadu Buhari was written by Senator Abu Ibrahim. Our State House correspondent Gloria Mizoke reports.
President Muhammadu Buhari arrives at the State House in company of his Ghanaian counterpart, President Nana Akufo-Addo. Less than 12 days to the end of the President Buhari's tenure, top government functionaries, including the President of the Senate, Vice President-elect, top business moguls are among notable guests, as 2 new books are unveiled in the President's honor. The 2 books, titled State of Repair: How Muhammadu Buhari Tried to Change Nigeria for Good, was written by journalist Anthony Goldman, while The Legacy of Muhammadu Buhari was written by Senator Abu Ibrahim. Former Governor of Ekiti State, who also doubles as one of the book reviewers, narrates that the books chronicles the key moments of the Buhari administration from 2015 to 2023 and the historical revolution during his tenure.
Anthony Goldman presents a sober picture of the security situation under Buhari, highlighting the triumphs without glossing over its travails. In his view, President Buhari entered and is leaving office with security as Nigeria's biggest challenge. But the challenge had changed significantly.
In his remark, the chairman of the occasion, who is also the president of Ghana, says President Buhari will be missed by Africa.
As leaders, we all have our high and low moments, but I have no doubt that prosperity will be kind to Muhammadu Buhari. President Buhari, we will miss you. West Africa, Africa, and indeed, the world will miss your leadership. The leadership of the military ruler turned consummate Democrat.
The Vice President-elect, Senator Kashim Shettima, as well as the President of the Senate, commend the President's contribution to the nation.
Our responsibility lies in learning from President Buhari's triumphant leadership of our complex nation. He has taught us that a leader's paramount duty is not to seek hollow praises, but to actively listen and be guided by the diverse opinions of the nation.
We hope and pray that the next set of ministers will work with the National Assembly in the way and manner that you have been able to make your ministers, special advisors, work with us.
President Buhari then performs the official unveiling of the 300- and 600-page books, flanked by top dignitaries. After the book launch, over 500 million naira was donated by eminent Nigerians. Donations, they explain, will be used for charity. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
And outside our shores, the United States says it will support Ukraine with the provision of advanced fighter jets, including the US-made F-16s, and also back training Ukrainian pilots to fly them. It's Simon Pusey with other international stories and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has made a speech at the Arab League summit asking for help to secure peace in his country.
I hope that most of us are here for the sake of peace and justice.
Zelensky made the appeal in Jeddah to Gulf states which have tried to remain neutral in the Ukraine conflict, despite Western pressure on Gulf oil producers to help isolate Russia. He said his priorities during the trip were to discuss Ukraine's peace formula for ending Russia's war, protection of the Muslim community in Ukraine, and the return of political prisoners from Crimea, which has been annexed by Russia. Meanwhile, Syria's President Bashar al-Assad has attended the Arab League summit for the first time since it was suspended from the regional body 12 years ago. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman here embracing the Syrian president. Mr. Assad was shunned by many fellow leaders after his government's violent crackdown on pro-democracy protests triggered a civil war in which 500,000 people have been killed. Syria was readmitted earlier this month. Meanwhile, leaders of the G7 nations are holding their annual meeting in Japan and have agreed new sanctions to starve what they call the Russian war machine. This is the moment the G7 leaders gathered on the final day of the summit to pose for a group family photo in front of the Itsu Kushima Shrine on Miyajima Island, which is just off the coast of Hiroshima. In a statement, the G7 nations demand that Russia immediately, completely and unconditionally withdraws its troops and military equipment from the entire internationally recognized territory of Ukraine. Ukraine's president will attend the summit on Sunday. The country's military rulers have said that at least 145 people are now known to have been killed in Myanmar by a powerful cyclone. They say most of the victims of Cyclone Mocha that made landfall last Sunday were from the Rohingya minority. The junta had earlier put the death toll at 21, but local residents say at least 40 had died. The UN have said around 800,000 people have been affected by one of the strongest storms to hit the region this century. A 95-year-old grandmother who Australian police tasered at an old people's home is in a critical condition as police said that the homicide squad will join a high-profile investigation into the incident. Claire Nowland, seen here skydiving years ago, was found by police outside her room holding a steak knife. 2 officers spoke with Nowland for several minutes, but when she failed to drop the knife and approach them, one fired a taser, knocking her to the ground.
Claire is 95 years old. She's about 5'2" and weighs all of 43 kilos. She can't walk on her own without a walking assistance. As they said, she had a walking frame or a wheelie walker. The use of a taser when a kind word was all she needed. If she was confused, which is what happens with people who have dementia, she needed kind words and assistance and help. She didn't need the force of the law, as it were.
A wildfire in the Spanish western region of Extremadura has ravaged as many as 3,700 acres and led to the evacuation of 550 people in the rural area. The commander of the military emergency unit said the fire is out of control and weather conditions are making the firefighters work particularly hard. About 200 to 250 firefighters are on the ground fighting the blaze in the area of the Caceres province near the border with Portugal. An unusually dry winter across parts of the south of the European continent and the long-term drought Spain suffers after 3 years of below-average rainfall has made the risk of severe wildfires rise in the country. And a rare 1929 Patek Philippe Calatrava watch owned by the last emperor of the Chinese Qing dynasty has hit the auction house with bidding starting at $1 million. The watch is a case study in how provenance and brand name trump condition when it comes to certain vintage watches. The original owner was Asin Gioro Puri, the last emperor of China. Only 7 Patek Philippe reference 96 complications like this were previously known. This is the 8th example to appear. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Welcome to Sports News. Manchester City FC manager Pep Guardiola has compared the tension of trying to wrap up the English Premier League title to a tennis player serving to win Wimbledon. Well, Man City can clinch the league without even kicking the ball if Arsenal lose at Nottingham Forest on Saturday. And if not, they will hoist the trophy by beating Chelsea on Sunday at the Etihad Stadium. But Guardiola knows the pressure of getting one last win in the title race can weigh heavily on the team, in the same way tennis players are sometimes struck with nerves if a Wimbledon title is within reach. Chelsea interim boss Frank Lampard has heaped praise on his upcoming host, Manchester City, but was hesitant to rank them among the best in history. Lampard explained the rest of the Premier League have to aspire to the high standards set by Pep Guardiola's side, that's title-chasing side, while the Blues are languishing 11th in the league with 43 points from 35 games. Jude Bellingham is injured and unlikely to feature for Borussia Dortmund this weekend in a blow to the club's battle with Bayern Munich for the Bundesliga title. Borussia Dortmund, 1 point behind the perennial champions with 2 games to play, travel to Augsburg on Sunday, with Bayern Munich hosting Freiburg 24 hours earlier. The England international's importance to Borussia Dortmund was evident in last Saturday's win over Borussia Mönchengladbach. That's sports news. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. It's back to you, Melissa.
Thank you, Ayotunde. And the main news again. Federal High Court in Kano today gave controversial judgment on the candidacy of some Labour Party candidates. The party and its lawyers said the judgment is statute barred. Also today, Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo said posterity will be kind to President Muhammadu Buhari as he launched 2 books written in honor of President Buhari. And that's your news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Melinda. Have a good night and stay safe.